name is Brandon Lewis. I'm 31 years old. And for most of my life, I believed fear was just an illusion, a survival instinct that modern life had outgrown. But after what happened in Black Hollow, I understood that fear is not always a product of imagination. Sometimes it's a warning, and sometimes we're just not smart enough to listen. It all began last October. I was exhausted. The deadlines, the endless notifications, the constant hum of city life in Seattle were suffocating me. Working remotely as a freelance content editor gave me the luxury to be anywhere, but ironically, I never left my apartment till I hit a wall. That's when a friend mentioned his family's old cabin near Black Hollow. Small, forgotten town, 2 hours east of Portland, Oregon. A place with no signal, no neighbors, no distractions. It's exactly what I thought I needed. The cabin sat at the edge of a sprawling cornfield, kind that doesn't seem to end, blending into the horizon where the land meets a thick line of trees. It had been years since I visited as a child, but there was one memory that stayed with me. The Scarecrow, crude figure nailed to a wooden post in the heart of the field. Torn clothes, a sagging hat, and a burlap sack for a face, stitched into a crooked, unnerving smile. Even as a kid, it unsettled me. But when I arrived at the cabin this time, after so many years, it felt different, like it had been waiting. The first 2 days passed quietly. I spent my time editing, sipping coffee, and enjoying the absolute silence. The only sound was the rustling of corn as the wind moved through the stalks, creating a rhythmic whisper that was almost meditative. For a while, it felt like the perfect escape. But on the third night, something changed. It was past midnight when I heard it. A soft thump, like a heavy boot on the wooden porch. I muted my laptop and listened. Another thump, slower this time, deliberate. I grabbed my phone using the flashlight and walked to the door. The porch was empty, but when I looked towards the field, the Scarecrow was gone. The post where it had always been nailed stood bare, leaning slightly. My stomach twisted. Maybe it fell. Maybe the wind knocked it down. But the air was dead still. No wind. No sound. I locked the door, convincing myself it was nothing, and went back to my work, though my mind couldn't focus. The next morning, I made coffee and walked past the kitchen window, and there it was, the Scarecrow. Back on the post. But this time, it wasn't hanging limply. It was upright, straight, and it was facing the cabin. It was facing me. I tried to rationalize. Maybe a neighbor saw it fall and put it back up. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks. But no matter how much I tried to explain it away, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It wasn't paranoia. It was heavy, like a weight pressing against my back. That night, the footsteps returned. But they didn't stop at the porch. They circled the cabin, slow, dragging. I turned off every light and sat in the dark, gripping a kitchen knife, listening to the wooden boards creak under invisible steps. The hours crawled until the first light of dawn bled through the curtains. At sunrise, I forced myself to walk into the cornfield. I needed to see it up close. The post had deep gouges, scratch marks that spiraled upward, as if something had climbed it or had been holding on desperately. On the ground near its base, I found a piece of burlap, torn and weathered. Stitched into it with rough, uneven thread were the words, "You see me? I see you." I stood there, staring at that piece of fabric, feeling the suffocating weight of something ancient. That night, sleep didn't come. Around 3 a.m., the doorknob began to rattle, slowly, not like someone forcing their way in, but like someone testing the lock, and the dragging noise returned, circling the house. By morning, I decided to leave. But before I packed, I drove into Black Hollow. It was a town suspended in time, old brick buildings, a lonely gas station, and a diner where the locals barely acknowledged strangers. I spoke to an elderly woman named Mary, the cashier at the general store. When I asked about the Scarecrow, her expression changed. Her face became blank, her eyes distant. "That Scarecrow's been there longer than anyone remembers," she said softly. "It doesn't protect the crops, it seals what's underneath." She refused to say more. I drove back to the cabin with a knot in my chest. I wasn't afraid of ghosts or urban legends. But this was different. I only wanted to grab my things and leave. But when I pulled into the driveway, I saw it. Standing on the porch, Scarecrow, Upright, motionless, waiting. It wasn't straw anymore. Its shape was wrong. It was human, yet hollow. The stitched smile remained wider now, like it knew. I sat in my car for what felt like an hour, paralyzed. When I finally gathered the courage to enter, the cabin was silent. But something was waiting on the kitchen table, an old worn-out journal. The pages were yellowed, the ink faded, but the words were frantic, rushed. The entries spanned decades. They told me to keep it standing. Never let it fall. It's not a scarecrow, if it's seal. If it falls, if it stands on its own, it remembers. The last entry was dated 3 days before I arrived. That night I didn't sleep. Every shadow in the room felt alive. Every sound, no matter how small, felt intentional. At dawn, I left. I didn't pack. I didn't even turn off the lights. I just drove, gripping the steering wheel, refusing to look in the rearview mirror. But here's the thing. Even now, months later, when I'm home, surrounded by noise, surrounded by people, it's still with me. At night, when the world falls silent, I hear it. The slow creak of a wooden porch step, the rustle of fabric, and I know deep down that it never needed to stay in that field. It found me.